we all want success and we all want to do well. And if you work in advertising, you want to do something wonderful and creative. I think the willingness to find a way to pull it off against all odds is as valuable as the core talent.
Chris Beresford-Hill is the worldwide chief creative officer at BBDO. Previously, he spent 2 years as North America president and CCO of Ogilvy, where he helped bring the agency and its clients a new level of relevance. He brought Workday to the Super Bowl, led the team that brought in the Verizon account, and one of the biggest Super Bowl campaigns ever, Can't Be Broken, featuring Beyonce, and created the most celebrated Super Bowl campaign of 2024, the social and influencer-led Michael CeraVe for CeraVe, and included an Adweek Best Creatives, the Adweek 100, and Business Insider's Most Creative People in Advertising.
The best thing you can do for someone is to say something kind about them behind their back. It's easy to compliment someone to their face, but to go around and show what we're valuing, show where the energy is, show what everyone's seeing, making sure you see people helping each other, rewarding it in that way.
During our conversation, we discuss the art of the cold email, how to write them so that people want to respond. And we go deep on the cold email that Chris wrote to me to come on the show. It's one of the best, maybe the best I've ever received. Then he shares how he earned his first Super Bowl ad. Love that story. Then Chris tells the story of how he and the team bounced back after losing a client that was worth 1/3 of their entire firm's revenue. And then he shares why he has a set reservation once a week at the same restaurant to meet with people who are important to him in his life.
Appeal to everyone's good nature. Everyone believes that they're a team player. Everyone knows that deep down they have good nature. You make a few spot appeals and you watch the connections happen.
All right, Chris, man, it is so cool to have you here on the Learning Leader Show. Welcome, man.
Thank you so much for having me. As I mentioned off air, I'm a very big fan, very long time listener.
I do appreciate that. And it was really cool to get your cold email. And that is actually what I want to talk about first, because I think this is a lost art, at least the lost art of being good at it, but writing a really good cold email that generates a response, I feel like is one of your superpowers, or at least you've developed this skill. Can you go into your mindset when it comes to writing a good cold email? What does it consist of? What are you thinking of? And how has it helped you throughout your career?
It's definitely helped me tremendously. It's got us talking. It got Tim Ferriss and I talking. It got me talking to a lot of people, a lot of other people I admire, and even some celebrities and artists that meant something to me. It brought me into a lot of conversations. I don't have as much of a formula. I do think, interestingly, the concept of a cold email, maybe that even inherently is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would ever email someone without a real connection or a real thing to talk about. So I think if you send a cold email and there is that distance between sender and receiver, it'll probably feel like a lot of things I'm sure your inbox and certainly mine populate with. But I think if you're able to reach out to someone with specificity, with understanding of who they are and what they do, that is received so differently. And I know the difference between someone who's maybe looking for a gig or looking to direct something for my agency. The difference between someone who's, hitting me with, as we say, the cut and paste, or someone who knows the work that I've been part of and knows why they'd be a good match. The difference between those two things are night and day. That's the first huge difference.
Yeah. The word you use that I love is specificity. When you wrote to me, Ryan, longtime listener, big fan. I think I listened to both Daniel Coyle's episodes 5 times and have gifted Culture Code at least 100 times. It changed my life for sure. That was the opening. So I immediately was like, oh, interesting. Is this real? Like, yes, this looks real to me. And you followed up with some of the things that you've done that are super impressive in your career. And then some things that we could potentially talk about. And to me, that specificity was, you proved it immediately, and it grabbed my attention to then read on further which then I saw, oh yeah, I think I've heard of this guy. You've done some huge things with commercials and Super Bowls and crazy people that you've gotten to work with. And I feel like that's a huge part that is missed, especially in the copy and paste world.
Yeah. I think think about all the messages we're bombarded with. I think these days too, I think you smell it a second away. You could see what's authentic. But it's also, by the way, it's also puts a little bit of an onus on the person reaching out. You don't, I don't I didn't email Malcolm Gladwell because I don't listen to his podcast and I don't know. I'm sure it's a great podcast that's fascinating and great people listen to it, but I can't talk to him the way I could talk to you or Ferris or any of those other people. And I think that's also the difference is, don't reach out to someone if you don't have a compelling connection to make. Do the work or be authentic. I mean, I think that's the authenticity and inauthenticity is you sense it in the second.
The two parts that need to be really specific, the specific praise and the specific ask. Sometimes those things are too broad, as in, like, I think you're awesome. I'm inspired. Can I pick your brain? None of that is specific. None of it is specific versus the specificity around the praise, as well as saying, I would love to talk to you about this. And it's a specific topic or it's a question about leadership or something like that. I think that's big. How has it helped you in your career, especially early on in your career, maybe trying to earn an internship or get a brief, or how has your cold emailing skills that you've, even if that might be the wrong phrase, but how have those skills helped you as you've built a career?
Um, I think I'm not afraid to reach out to anyone uh, because I'm not afraid to be ignored. I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to lose. I think that's we could get to that, but I do think that is I'll call it a superpower. I think there's Tom Brady and there's Bill Belichick, and I understand that they, when they lose, go to a very dark place. They can't handle it. I'm not that, but there's plenty of people who win that just are not afraid of the hurt. So there's a whole other there's a whole other world of being not afraid to put yourself out there. So boy, I mean, I think I suppose I've been cold emailing my whole life. I didn't advertising today. The reason I'm putting myself out there so much is I think we've got to work harder to attract and retain the big talent because there's so many jobs for creative people. But 20 years ago, you could be a screenwriter or you could work in advertising. Those are two ways to make films that would get in front of people. I mean, I think I emailed to get a job. I think I emailed a creative director of a company, take the rest of my 20s. And then, of course, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with that agency and why I wanted to be there and why I had the skills. But I think getting into the industry without a neighbor or a parent or a friend of the family that was in it, I felt like I felt like I had to learn everything I could about it and then put it to use and then be excited and proud of what I've learned and go and reach out to people. So a story I've shared a couple of times, but I was an unpaid intern at a wonderful small creative boutique agency in Boston called Modernista. And at the time, if you remember, when the Hummer H2 truck came out, so this would have been about 2002, that beautiful yellow giant, giant vehicle. We would write print ads, back when there was magazines everywhere. Today, it's just there's no more magazines, it's just protein bars. But there used to be 100 magazines where there's 100 protein bars in the airport, and there were these kind of throwaway assignments where you just write a different line on the ad. And so I was an intern and I was vying for a job and it was very competitive. It was very hard to get hired at that time in the biz. And so I had the assignment of the Dallas Mavericks 2002 season program back cover with just a picture of the truck. And so at that time, Mark Cuban, then owner, was constantly getting fined by the league for criticizing the officiating. And so I just wrote the line, even Mark Cuban has nothing bad to say about it, with the picture of the truck. And then I heard this myth that if you found his email address and you wrote him, he would always write you back. So I made a PDF and I wrote him. I forget what my cold subject line was, but I reached out to him and maybe I said lowly intern looking for help. I don't know what. And I sent him the ad and I asked it if I could have his permission. And so when I went to my boss and I brought him the ad, he laughed at it. He was a sports fan. And then he said, there's no way we can do this. And then he turned the next page and I had the email printed out. And I think later he told me that's when you got hired. It's because you didn't just have an idea, you took the responsibility of bringing the idea to life. And that I suppose I learned something when he shared that with me too. But so I owe Mark Cuban writing back to that for me getting my start.
Just this idea, man, of being proactive. There's one thing to have the idea, there's another thing to actually get it done. The execution element is huge. And you did it before your boss asked you to, right? You had it all done. Like, I can't imagine how impressed that dude was at that time when he turns the page and you'd already done the really hard work of getting a famous billionaire to reply and give his okay to run the ad. Like, were you thinking about that at the time, or you were just like, oh, this is just what I got to do to get it done? Like, I'm just curious of your mindset at such a young age to know and then to execute and to be so proactive.
It was not calculated. It wasn't that. It was I think today I think I was reading that great book Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull, and he said one of the things I underlined 5 times is he said at Pixar, you never need permission to take responsibility. But that was that is such a profoundly important point, and I'd imagine in any organization the employees that the leaders rely on the most and believe the most and are the ones that take more responsibility and don't just do the one thing they're assigned, but feel responsibility for the total success. But I think at that time, I honestly, I just thought, fuck it. I just put, it was a creative idea. I knew that there was going to probably be a problem with getting this ad made. And I remembered that legend that if you could find his email and creative advertising is just putting 2 things together, just making surprising connections constantly. So I think I was mostly just excited that I had written something and I connected with that with a bit of lore. And then I just, so I think I was just kind of just doing stuff when I was doing it.
Well, I got to ask because I think we are mutual fans of the Dave Matthews Band. And I heard was it an 8-year period that you and Dave were pen pals? Like, how did this happen?
Yes. Again, I think caring a little bit more, paying a little bit more attention around things you're passionate about, and then utilizing, that knowledge that lies on the excess. I think I don't know if this is how I first got to him or I think I watched Saturday Night Live through to the end, and they told you who the hotel sponsor was. And I figured, well, that's probably where they put the guests up. So I think I might have called that hotel and gotten him or something like that.
Seriously? You called up?
Or the other way was I had for the over 40s, they'll remember the liner notes in your compact disc. I think I spent so much time poring over that I think this was it. They recorded their first album or first studio album, Under the Table and Dreaming, at Beresford-Hill Studios. I'll never forget that, in upstate New York. So I pre-Google, I don't know how, I think I might have gotten a phone book or something. I found the address to that studio, and then I wrote a letter. And it was, this whole thing could probably be about cold calling. I wrote a letter to him, and I didn't say, I'm a big fan, can I have your autograph? I didn't say whatever the 1990 equivalent is of, can you hop on an informative call for 20 minutes? And I actually asked some questions about what was going to be on the album.
Oh.
And I received back, God, like a month or 2 later, I remember coming home from school and there was this package, and I opened it and I just was not thinking. And then and I still have it, on like some kind of a big round piece of paper, almost like a giant like napkin, he had written me a huge circular letter with like a drawing on the inside. And he told me what songs were going to be on the album and blah, blah, blah. And then I've also realized, I think, try not, ask, if you're going to reach out to someone, ask them a specific question. Obviously, you don't like to answer general questions. You don't want to explain yourself, Ryan Hawk to someone. But if someone asks you a pointy question about leadership, well, okay, let's talk about it. The other thing is, show up with gifts. And so I had also known that he was a big Beatles fan. And so my father had found some sort of a Beatles bootleg, like an audio tape that he had a copy of that was like the Beatles gave a tape to Peter Sellers of some outtakes, and I found that, or he'd found that, and so then I sent Dave a Beatles tape, and then he wrote me back about that, and so I didn't overdo it, for a couple years, and then I would go backstage, I would get the backstage passes, and he was fucking awesome to me, I mean, just what
That's
the other
so
thing is,
cool.
you meet someone and that was my first, brush with, a magical person, and to have that be to be a wonderful and rewarding experience, obviously that can lead to a lot of things going right in your world. And I think the opposite could probably change your course. But yeah, it started with, maybe a little bit like the Mark Cuban thing. I think I'm if I'm curious about something, I'm deeply curious. And I think the most interesting tidbits are on the periphery, and that's the stuff you leverage. Bearsville Studios, preferred hotel of SNL, Mark Cuban's email lore. It's
God,
not
I love that.
the
I
main
love
stuff.
it. Well, you gotta go do the extra. Like most people who do excellent work are creative thinkers. They do extra. They're willing to do what it takes, and you have the willingness to get ignored for a long time in some cases, or forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave has been number one on my kind of dream list for 10 years now. And I've recently got in contact with people who are close to him. It's the first person ever in the history of the show that I've offered to make a large donation to their charity to come on. Like I'm trying everything. We still aren't even close to it, yes, but I will try forever. Number two, and a close second, is Doris Kearns Goodwin, which I'm really doing the same types of things and haven't made it work yet. But I think like you got to be willing to do the extra. You got to be willing to be patient. You got to be willing to be consistent and continually get after it. I think those skills then, Chris,
Yes.
are portable to other parts of your life, to other parts of your career. So like we're harping on this one thing, but I think that has probably played a massive role in the building of your career. Can you go deeper into the skills you developed to look at the CD on the inside and look at where they recorded the album, or wait till the end of Saturday Night Live to see the hotel where their guests stay for free, and the cold call that hotel, like those skills? Can you share more about how that has helped you build such an amazing career? And you're like still right in the middle of it.
It's, I think today, maybe at the wherever I am on the spectrum of starting with, my 9-year-old cold calls. By the way, the other thing is my parents knew what I was doing and they didn't stop me. So that really, really helped. They didn't, I don't know if they fully encouraged it. They probably thought it was a little weird that their son was, constantly hitting the phone book, but whatever. But that was a tremendous help, because that could have been probably thwarted as whatever they but I think today I do believe a definition of a leader is someone who takes whatever comes at them and figures out how to turn it into an opportunity for everybody. Um, and so I think, always looking at the surface area in front of you and finding angles on things. And so my parents moved around a bunch when I was a kid and I was very shy. So I was really like I was a very quiet, mediocre student at school. And then I had this like alter ego when I went home. Like I was like, I was like James Bond at home, where I was, conversing with these people that, my classmates, would, I got in with the New York Knicks, and I got in with Dave Matthews, and I got in with, Rob Liefeld, who created Deadpool. But I didn't talk about it at school, At school, everyone was talking about the comic books, and at home, I was figuring out how I could hang out with them. So I think I just think that mindset of, we all want success, and we all want to do well. And if you work in advertising, you want to do something wonderful and creative. I think the willingness to find a way to pull it off against all odds is probably as valuable as the core talent, And I think a lot of us, we overstate the importance of the competence, but competence without insane follow through or insane problem solving, it stagnates. In this industry, our batting average, even with one of our favorite clients, is probably bringing, 5 to 10 ideas per one approved. And our batting average on a more challenging piece of business is 50 to 1. So you've got to have a mindset for long shots. And if you want to be really successful, you've got to build a culture where people are constantly solving every single peripheral problem around the idea, rather than putting an idea on the table and waiting for someone to say yes or no. So I think that mindset has gotten me probably more ideas made, which put me in a good position. But then when you're leading the team, to try to get everyone thinking that way and to highlight that, reward that, encourage that, that's, I think, how you can start to scale in our industry.
I want to dig into your career and your arc and what it means to work in advertising and to lead creative people and to come up with ideas and to get Super Bowl ads. And I want to posit that right now, but I want to pause as well because I heard something else, and I'm curious if you still do it, because this is something I hope you do, as I love this. That I read that after COVID, you started going out. I think it might have been to breakfast, but not only was the breakfast important in the place where you went, I heard important, but even more important to me was the fact of, and tell me if you still do this or if maybe you've tweaked it by now, since I think it's been years. You take a mentor, you take a mentee, and you take a peer, and you go out to eat once a week and gather with that grouping of four. This is an idea that I absolutely love. Do you still do this? And if so, I'd love just to hear your mindset and your process and philosophy behind it.
Well, I think, as we both know today, the accelerated pace and anxiety in business means you're emailing, you're on Zoom, you're in meetings, you're texting, you're slacking, and if you're really lucky, you find 10 minutes to think. So to have a meal outside of the office and have a standing reservation, I think, is just one of the few things where I can't control so much of how my day unfolds. So it's every Friday because everyone's in a good mood on a Friday. And I've loosened up a little, and sometimes I've found it's sometimes best to have breakfast with a mentor or a mentee or a old friend. So it's harder to get everyone's schedules right, but that is it's one of these things where a hard decision stuck to has paid off, and it's probably in ways I don't even know whether or not. I'd like to think that some of the people from the company that I go to breakfast with, that it means something, and I do. It is a ask me anything, and if I can't tell you something, I will tell you why I can't tell you, and I'll tell you everything I possibly can. And so I do it like, not like a boss, but like a friend, like someone in your corner. And then the other two, to see an old friend or someone who inspires me, it's just like nourishment, It's just so I'm probably more productive on a Friday than any other day because I start out by either giving or being around those people where I feel like I'm receiving.
I just love the idea of the standing reservation. This is like you just auto set this up in your life that you're going to have the meal at this place on this day, and you have this kind of design intentionally in your life to build out those relationships. Because you're right. I mean, it's one thing to do a Zoom and all that, but like sharing a meal with a person or even regularly sharing meals with people completely changes the dynamic of the relationship than if you just text or just see them on Zoom from time to time.
It makes the case. I often think about this, that you're on a Zoom and you're on Hollywood Squares, and it's easy to disassociate with someone and be a little judgmental. I think when you sit at a table, when you talk, when you ease into the conversation the way you do in life, you start with personal things, that changes everything. Then you go out and get drunk with them. Then you really like that. Then that person that used to be like annoying in the Hollywood Squares, now you love that guy. But the best is, I don't want to be a cliche, but the height of it is going through some shit together.
Yep.
And it's funny enough, it starts with these wonderful positive things, but if you want to get all the way to the end of really loving someone and really appreciating every single thing about them, then go under extreme duress together. And I know back in the day, people used to do Outward Bound. I don't think I'd be, I don't think I'd be that person to do that. But then you think of the other extreme of when something really bad happens at work, and that's probably the better than any breakfast you can have.
You just brought up the part about getting drunk with people, and this seems like a lost art as well. I'm not a proponent of telling people
No,
to go
no,
out and get
of
hammered,
course.
but it feels like that's going away some too. Like I don't know. Do you keep that in your life? Like how big of a role is that for you?
Minimal. I'm Irish, so I definitely like to have a few beers, but I've Seinfeld has a bit about morning guy and night guy, and one of them will kill the other one. Morning guy will win or night guy will win, and I think maybe 15 years ago I morning guy won. So I feel like I would go out and get loose with people, but I'd have to do it before 8 p.m. and I don't think that's the preferred time for most people. But no, I think generationally, I think things have changed. I think people are, I work out with a bunch of younger guys, and when I was their age, I was too hungover to even form a sentence, and then these guys are doing wind sprints. So I do think culturally, wellness has become something for young people, and I think it definitely wasn't for us in the '90s. So we were bonding through, yeah, inebriation for sure.
Okay, I want to go through some of the stories,
Yeah.
some of the things that you sent me that I think would be fun to pull on the string a little bit. So, your first ad, I got to hear more about this. You're going through a garbage can to write a script, and then I think had something to do with Budweiser. What was this all about?
Um, it's funny that I didn't intend to thread everything this way, but I think whatever's at the core of the cold email, I think it's probably at the core of everything. And I worked at a really tiny ad agency, and uh, it was because of that, it was not hierarchical. And so, as an intern, I was kind of I was given the opportunity to write these little headlines like the Mark Cuban one I told you about, these little one sentences. And I was also I also was given a giant binder with automotive specifications, and I was writing website and brochure copy for General Motors. So that was the work. But Budweiser came in as a new client, and I knew that they wouldn't. My boss at that time, a guy named Lance Jensen, who's phenomenal. He's still in the biz. Um, he'd said to anyone, if anyone can help out in this, and so I saw this as a chance as the lowly junior. I guess I'd been hired, and so I was, making $22,000 a year as a junior copywriter. Couldn't have been happier. And I wanted to take a whack at some Budweiser scripts, but I'd never written a script, and no one taught me how. So they gave everyone a key to the office. So I always stayed late and just tried to work on my craft, as it were. And I wanted to write a Budweiser script or two, and so I had to go around and fish through the recycling, and like I found some old Aquafina or Very Fine Juices scripts, and I uncrumpled them just to look at like how you write a description of a visual, and then you write the character name and indent and because I didn't know what a script looked like. So I kind of put a bunch of those out, figured out how to write one, and then I had a few ideas, and so I wrote a bunch, and I just left them on his desk. And in the morning, he called me in, and he liked a couple of them, or he liked he was being generous. He liked a thing or two, and then he sat and wrote with me, and it gave me a real show of generosity in return for my chutzpah. So I probably would overstate the kernel I had, but I got to sit and write with him, and so that was kind of how I endeared myself or gave enough in order to get a better seat at the table, so to speak.
Again, though, right? Being proactive, taking action, doing something that you didn't even know like what a script looked like, but that didn't stop you or say, wait a second, I need to read a full book, or I need to take a class, or I need to, not that there's anything wrong with that, but instead of that, you learned by doing it and then getting one-on-one coaching from someone who sounds like a master at it. What was that like? What was that moment when you sat down and when I hear I got to write with them, I'm immediately thinking like, wait, what does that even look like? What does that mean? Take me inside the room. What's it like inside the room when you get to write side by side with someone who's really good at it?
So, so, uh, so Lance Jensen would do this with me and some of the creatives. And then later, when I worked at another agency called Goodby Silverstein and Partners, which is a very American classic ad agency. They did Got Milk among a million other things, and the creative director there, named Jamie Barrett, would also do the same thing. It's kind of a pull up a chair, okay, and then they crack the knuckles and they sort of say, all right, like I like this part, so let's start here. Okay, so I like the idea of a forgetful guy in a Budweiser commercial. That's easy to make fun of, and so I think what it would be is they'd almost let you shadow them, kind of writing off of your kernel, leaving enough space for you to interject. And if you threw out something good enough, it kind of made its way on there, or if not, but it's kind of a very and by the way, it reminds me I should probably go sit and do that with someone, but it's quite gentle and it's very nice. And you just you get the benefit of it wasn't um I didn't think, oh my God, if I'm sitting next to him, there's probably a good chance this thing will get made. I think I realized I was getting a chance to see how he thought and
Yeah.
and what that process was like. I was much more excited not to be showing anything of myself to him or thinking about converting. I think I was saying, okay, this is someone I admire. I'm going to watch them do what they do, and I'm going to immediately figure out how much of that I should be doing myself, or what's the same, or what's different, or what have you.
Speaking of the writing process, and now in your position as both a creative person but also leading a company, I've found writing to be one of the ultimate tools for learning. It forces clarity of thought. And I push hard every leader that I work with to have some sort of a writing practice, whether they want to publish it for others to read and judge or not, doesn't matter to me. What does matter is that they get the thoughts out of their head onto the page, because that's when you truly get a feel if you know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And so now that you, and then writing ad copy and all of that fascinates me because I always want to do it better for my own business, like selfishly, like how do I get better at this skill that it's not one I've developed yet? So there's a lot there, but I'm curious, Chris, from your perspective, starting when you were quite young, all the way up to this point in your career where you're still writing a lot, and your writing is what earns you work. Your writing earns a response to a cold email. Your writing helps you lead people effectively. Can you go deeper into writing and thinking and communication and how that helps you from a leadership perspective?
Sure. Talking about the process, I think advertising is probably a very broad. Some people think, almost web banners and direct response. Other people think, Gillette, the best a man can get. Writing that enduring brand tagline and writing a functional kind of conversion asset. Those are, highly different things. And uh, I think, probably where the best creative flex is when you're creating a new campaign. So, for example, my friend here at BBDO, who's been here some 20 years, Peter Kane, uh, 15 years ago, wrote the line, "You're not you when you're hungry for Snickers." That would be the when I talk about coming up with advertising, it's Snickers has this strategy. They need to, or they satisfy, this purpose in people's lives, and this is the audience. Now, tell me what the story is. What is the how does the brand show up? What does the brand look like, sound like? Who are they? That is the one where you take all that in. And my youngest self, I'll tell you what I would do 20 years ago and what I do today. I would brain dump everything, everything I could possibly, you've got to purge it out of your system. So write every idea, bad ones, good ones, ones that make no sense. And when you think you're done, and I'm sorry if this is like a gross, but you've got to almost stick your finger down your throat and find and actually trick yourself into doing more. And my friend Jason Bagley, who runs an advertising school, has made a list of questions of prompts that you should ask yourself. I was doing a version of this on my own, but his thing is once you've gotten every idea out of your system, you should say, what is the worst ad I could possibly make? What would I do if I wanted to make fun of this strategy? What would I write if the laws of gravity no longer existed? So almost prompts that force you to make something up to satisfy them. And I would go through this exercise for 20% of the time I had. If I had a week, I would do this for a day. No matter what happened the rest of that week or 2 weeks, I would always return to that. I would take an idea out, I'd write it. I wouldn't go off and think of something new. I would return to that and I'd find another. You find it all in there. That to me is probably the most common process. Everyone does it differently, obviously. There may be some psychopath who's so good that they quietly write out one perfect idea from the beginning. But for most of my colleagues, that was what it was. It was about getting everything out. Today, I think over time, when you've done it so many times over and over, now I can do it very quickly in my head. Meaning I don't need to have a 1 day brain dump and sift it for a week. I can immediately start rolling through things and I can stop on something that's good. And I've developed the skill now that if I'm looking at someone else's work, I just know when it clicks. I just know when it clicks relative to the problem. So it's just been, the same as I'm sure dropping back and throwing a certain route. It's just the more you do it, the more you do it, the more you do it, you kind of get into a zone or you get into a strong muscle memory and you just know exactly what it feels like when you hit it.
Interesting you brought that up. One of the things that happens for a quarterback, the more reps you get is, and you've heard people say this, is everything around you slows down. When you're young and you're playing or you're new, like first starting as a freshman in high school or a freshman in college, or even first reps as a pro, it's like, oh my God, this is so fast. There's no way. Like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. And then you just got to complete one of those deep balls or just get a completion and you're okay, let me settle in. And then each rep there forward, it gets a little bit slower, a little bit slower, a little bit slower till eventually you feel like I'm faster than everybody out here. Like it's not easy, but it's easier. What's the version in your world of the game slowing down around you?
So let's say I'm at a point where someone else has 5 ideas. I often believe creativity is deconstructed usually by non-creative people, and it becomes very academic. And the truth is, it's not academic at all for the people that are participating in the creative act. I actually think oftentimes creative people aren't even aware of all the structural things their ideas do. They just feel it, and other people, whatever. And I think the version today for me, and of any strong creative leader at an ad agency is when you see that idea, it lifts off the page. But furthermore, it's not enough just for you to anoint it and say, this is the one. You can grab that idea within 2 seconds of seeing it, and you can flip it around and you can manipulate it, and you can understand the power and potential of it, and you can very quickly develop a sense of mastery around the idea. And that is I think what gives obviously the people in your company confidence. But a creative has just spent their whole cannon. They've used all their gunpowder on these ideas. You get to pick it up and say, I can protect this every which way to Sunday because I understand this even better than you do because I've just seen it. You've taken it to the end of the marathon, and now I see how much farther it can go. And so I think that ability, and then the way it manifests, you can talk to a marketer and they can challenge it. They can probe it. They can ask if it can thread a certain line, and your ability to firmly hold the idea without compromising the integrity, but manipulate it, change it. That's kind of that's what it feels like on a really good day.
It seems like the name that popped in my head as you were describing the intuitive element of they might not even be able to describe it, but they can feel it and it lifts it up, was Rick Rubin.
Uh-huh.
It feels like because Rick isn't the guy who actually plays any instruments, but he's produced some of the greatest music ever over the last, I don't know, few decades in multiple genres and different styles of music. But it's almost like he just has this sense. He's developed this skill to know what sounds pleasant to our ears. How much of like Rick's work do you study, or how much like do you oh, it's right there. Okay. We did not
Yeah,
set this up. Yeah,
there's
how
the
much of
thought.
this is like a part of your life?
You know what? Okay, this is very interesting. I read it and then I listened to it, which is even better because his voice is incredible. And
So good.
if you've never heard Rick Rubin himself speak about creativity, I would even skip the hard book and listen to it because he kind of sounds like what he's talking about, the whole thing. Um, Rick Rubin, if I was feeling really low, really empty, I could pick this up and I would feel re-inspired. Um, I don't feel like I really need this on most days. I feel like I need the Learning Leader podcast because I feel like all I've got is creativity. I need confidence. So anyway, but I think if you are in a creative industry or creative adjacent, I think it is a wonderful look into the mindset. I think if you live in that mindset, it's funny. I was saying to my partner Nancy here at BBDO, she was shocked because I read business books nonstop. I think I was like every time I've read a business book, and I'm not talking about like serious textbooks. I'm talking about the airport business books. Usually written by semi ghostwriters and things like that. And I always get one thing out of it that helps me with this business, with dealing with marketers, with dealing with non-creative ideas, but all the peripheral forces.
The
Uh,
people.
but it's funny, but it's like business people read books about Da Vinci, and then
Yep.
creative people read books about the CEO of GE. It's very funny. Like my escapism is not reading about creativity. It's it's reading about leadership and pragmatists.
You said that in your email. Like, I'm obsessed with this. I'm reading leadership management books all the time, listening to your podcast all the time. You said at the beginning of that answer, I need confidence. I don't that didn't sound right to me. I don't sense
Oh,
that in you. What do you mean by that?
well, how about this? I actually think I would say I think my creative industry um, is one that it's in the front line. AI is probably going to disrupt um, the accounting industry faster than it's going to disrupt the creative advertising industry yet. There's all these looming fears of what was this going to take away, creative people's jobs, or is, the nature of business, or, clients' willingness to invest in high funnel advertising, which we specialize in. And I think beyond creative directing work, I think our responsibility at all the big creative agencies is writing the business and advocacy for the value of creativity and how it changes the fate of brands and impacts consumers. And so I think leading a company well, because at BBDO we have an incredible global CEO named Nancy Reyes, who's my partner, and she really does the business, but a lot of the vision and a lot of the looking at headwinds and opportunities and how we position ourselves in the market. I want to learn everything I can about successes in leadership and in order to do the best job there, because you know, I am like a nerdy writer by trade. So this is like the leadership is like a late skill, and that's kind of why it's the new thing that I'm learning.
What percentage? I'd love to hear like the breakdown of how you spend your time. Like, what percentage of it is being an ad man, being a creative who's writing and thinking and coming up with ideas, and what percentage of your time is spent leading people and working with others and doing like one-on-ones and hiring and trying to develop teams and building culture? Like, the I know I'm sure it's not a perfect breakdown, but I am just curious how you allocate your time.
It's unfortunately, um, you've got to do it all. There's definitely roles where you can say I've got to ruthlessly prioritize. I think if you sit over the whole thing, you've got to do everything. And I would say 20, 20, 20, but the 20% on creative is like 80% of my soul and energy.
Yeah.
So the biggest impact I can make with our clients and with the company is to champion, unlock, shepherd, uh, deliver a giant idea. Like those are, at the end of the day, um, we could have the most motivated group. We could have the most balanced departments. We could have a great agency positioning. We could have no HR problems. All those things could be solved, but without magnetic ideas and the actual product, um, there's nothing. There's no there. So I do everything, and by the way, the casting is instrumental, and so going around our global network, traveling, meeting everybody, learning about the strengths in every office, trying to capitalize on those strengths, trying to bring the network together. It's very inspiring, but it's very operational, and it definitely is much more about bringing a community together, giving to that community, and that being really the primary influence. But then, Pepsi is one of our new clients in New York, and I just came over to talk to you right after sitting on the couch with my creative leads on Pepsi, kicking around how the hell we're gonna pull off a crazy stunt that's gonna get filmed in a couple weeks. So I'm always there. I'm always going to find the good work, or I'm going to find the problem works and get it unstuck. And then the rest of it is like the privilege of having this job is like everything else. Just do it. You got to do it.
Yeah. I'm
Might be
fascinated
a
by,
terrible thing to talk about. Let's unpack this because you probably can't do all of it. It's a bad mindset, but
well, no, I mean, it's part of the role when you're a senior leader and you're in a creative position and you got to that position. Part of the reason was because you're so good at that thing.
right.
And that leads me to want to talk about that specific thing. As far as when I look at your history of your career, one of the things you're known for is going to a place that maybe is doing okay, or in some cases not great. And then within a couple of years, they are doing great, and you've increased revenues and you've gotten amazing briefs and projects and big time clients. I love the idea of how do you earn new business, right? As a longtime sales guy, that was the first 12 years of my career. It's really hard, but it's also really necessary and really worth it to get good at it.
Mhm.
What is the process like for you to earn a new client, someone like Pepsi or somebody else? Like what happens? What goes into it? Other than, I hate to say other than the fact that they've just seen your history of work and you're like, let's just get that guy. He's the best. Like that is done. That takes decades to get to that point. I'm curious more maybe earlier in your career, what's the process to earn a new client?
Well, it's the if it's not given to you, and the ultimate compliment, and by the way, I think one of the best things you can do with an ad agency is if you want the absolute most out of your team, be a marketer, be a brand that knows what they want and is willing to meet a few agencies and then say you're the ones, and not create some arduous, unending pitch process. Um, I would say that you've got to go through a competitive creative pitch, which would be, traditionally between 3 and 5 agencies would take a briefing from a client about their product, about their consumer, about what their challenges are, and you'd bring back, after 2 weeks, a strategy, and probably about 2 weeks later, you'd bring sample campaigns. That is the traditional process. But the the thing is, um, if Nike comes up for review tomorrow, I'll just call that Nike because it would be probably the most world-class, uh, you know, advertising creative account you could ever imagine. The real game is being in those 3 to 5 agencies, and that is only work you've done and reputation. So it's kind of when you win an account, you're competing in a group, and that's much more about playing your own game, thinking about what the best thing possible to do is, something you're going to be passionate about because you've got to show up to the client with a lot of conviction and a lot of energy. But the truth is, you can have the best team in the world, but if you don't have the work underneath your feet, you will never get the phone call. And there's no cold email I could write to Nike if we didn't have the work to back it up that would get us in the game. So really, I think your audition is the creative work you do, and then you get the chance to compete, and that's a fair ground, and that really is chemistry strategy. But if they see a great idea, that's it.
That's it.
That's the
What
only way.
about your What about your first Super Bowl ad? You said you sold it by trying to solve more than the brief, which made my ad the only one in contention. What do you mean by that?
So the trick here, again, if all roads lead back to doing more, um, the thinking was there was probably about 10 creative people invited to pitch, a bit of a internal jump ball. And it was for a peanut company called Emerald Nuts that they basically said the brief was we want to win the Super Bowl. We want to have the most popular, most viewed, funniest ad. Um, and you know, I wanted a better chance at winning. I think, as you know, I like to read the liner notes. I like to watch through to the end of the program. I like to hang out, just see if is there any more there. Is there anything more there for me to work with, just in life and in business? Um, and so I grabbed a hold of the strategist who had written the brand strategy, and his name is Matt Herman. And I asked him, I said, is there anything else they want to talk about? And he said, well, they just want to win the Super Bowl, but that we are talking to them about maybe positioning nuts as a form of energy. So instead of trying to write the funniest Super Bowl ad ever, I just wrote funny ads that were about the peanuts providing energy. So when we went to a meeting, and I had five ideas, and so and so had five ideas, and someone else had five ideas, they probably had funnier ads than me. Um, but they were doing one thing, and my ads were doing two things because I was selling a benefit. It was about the peanuts giving you energy plus a funny Super Bowl ad. And so by doing that, by solving more of the problem, by bringing more value to the table than was asked, it was the simplest way to clear out the field.
And you won it.
Yeah, yeah.
What happened? What happened then? How did the commercial go? How did it
It
air?
it went, I mean, it was my wildest dream. It was an ad called Robert Goulet. Do you remember him, the old crooner?
Uh-uh.
He sang The Impossible Dream. He's like a magnificent, handsome, old-timey singer. And I don't know why I was obsessed with him, but at that time I found him very funny from a this kind of man from a past time. And so I wrote a sentence that said, at 3 in the afternoon, when your blood sugar and your energy are low, Robert Goulet shows up and messes with your stuff. And then the whole commercial was someone nodding off at their desk, and then this lounge singer lowering through the ceiling, and behaving as a poltergeist, taping people to desk chairs and fucking with people's stuff and throwing their papers around. Um, and it was, it is. I think if you watched it, you'd say it was batshit crazy, but it was probably one of the most strategic things I've ever been part of, because it basically just is problem solution. We just invented a completely made up, memorable problem, uh, and it did really well. It was Ad Age the next day called it the number one Super Bowl ad. There was an ad reviewer at the time named Bob Garfield, and he gave it the top rank. And this was early in the days of YouTube, where not every video on earth was on YouTube. And for a couple of days, it was the number one or number two comedy video on all of YouTube, which probably meant it only had like 500,000 views, because I don't think we were all on YouTube 24/7. But I wish I got a screen grab of that.
How did that feel?
It felt great. Well, what felt really good about it was, I think, uh, uh, solving the problem, accruing a bit of success, getting something under my belt that would mean something. But I also felt like I expressed myself, because it did good things for Emerald Nuts, but it was deeply my own sense of humor. It was the kind of thing that makes me laugh, and I would think makes my friends laugh. And so I think that became like, okay, like maybe my sense of humor is not just for me. Maybe I can entertain people with things that I didn't know would.
How did it change the arc of your career?
Um, I think every time if you I would equate a Super Bowl to solving a big famous brand platform, having a big commercial or a big statement piece. I think anytime you can be part of one of those, um, it becomes a little bit of foundation, a little bit of bedrock under you. And I think if anyone can get lucky once. I think if you can get lucky three times, you become a pretty good bet for people. So I think you kind of look at, as a someone told me once that baseball is the only sport where your individual stats being the best for you always equate to the most success for the team. Whereas in basketball, you could have the most insane stats and be hemorrhaging points on defense. Um, I think as you come up as a creative, the points for you are also the points for your clients in the agency. But I think you need to get a few things under you to make it to the next level, to someone to see the track record and have confidence in you. So you've got to harness your body of work.
I like this idea of like being at the edge of like finding an idea on the edge of possible that you send some notes to me about, and like this value of potentially going over your skis. Like I literally went skiing recently. I'm not a great skier, but good enough to kind of hold my own. But then sometimes, you push it and you fall, you crash,
Mhm.
and that's when you know that you're probably pushing it enough as you crash every once in a while. And like I think part of being excellent, part of striving for excellence is that willingness to be over your skis from time to time. And you even wrote that sometimes like you got to lie. Now I want to put that in proper context. What do you mean by that? That willing, like how do you push your edges? How do you get over your skis? And why have you lied maybe a little bit in the past to help do something great?
Um, I think it's a little not to go too heavy into sports metaphors, but someone once described Messi's soccer style, and they paid me. It's my friend Guillermo Vega, who's the head of creative for Coca-Cola now these days, but he's had a really illustrious career. He told me for a while. He kept telling me I was messy, and I thought he was like insulting my like thinking process or my and then he's like, no, like Lionel Messi. And I literally for a day I thought he was just insulting me, but with like a nice big smile. But I think sometimes if someone tells you what they perceive, it helps you understand things. Um, so I think when Messi walks around, he's feeling out the pitch. He's walking. He's on this corner. He's on that corner. He's going up near this player, that player, and it just seems uh, like you don't really know what he's doing. Like he's just moving around, and then next thing you know, he slices to the goal. I think you've got to, you know, I would equate that to walking around the agency every day. Okay, how's this idea going? How's that idea going? How's this client going? How's that client going? And then you see one, you see something where you go, okay, let's take this and let's stick this in the goal fast and let's do it with conviction. Um, and so doing that is it's got to be an idea that feels a little scary, a little dangerous, like it could be a mammoth success or a colossal failure. That's where the excitement is. That's where the tingles are. So that's what you've got to find as a creative leader. But then when you do it, it becomes a little bit of an EQ game and a little bit of a willingness to fail. And as I think I mentioned to you offline, how to go all the way without electrocuting yourself. But that if you're going to do something truly brilliant, you've got to really put it out there, and you've got it is if it's brilliant, it is going to be a perceived risk, and you're going to need to grease the wheel. You're going to need to de-risk it in some way, and sometimes that means putting your own ass on the line. So I think enough time has passed that I'm probably safe for saying I was part of the Michael Sarah CeraVe campaign that many people saw in the Super Bowl last year, and we had a client that really liked it, and I knew if we got to do this thing, it could be a hit. It could be great. And the client just said, I just need to know if I say yes to you, and if I say yes to this, that we can get Michael. And so I said, yeah, we've already spoken with his agent and he's really, really interested. And that was a not an entire truth. I wanted his agent to be excited about it, but I just, you've got to, and this is, by the way, this is, what your role is as a leader is you've got to be very careful of the example you set, but there are just moments where you've got to take a risk and then figure out how to get the universe to make it work. And so that gave the client confidence to say, I want to go with this team. I want to go with this idea. Now, God forbid, Michael Cera said, I hate moisturizer. We had ideas for days. We were going to solve the problem beautifully, but to get this deal going, it required a little bit of a risk. But those are the moments, and then, it wasn't lost on me when we got on a Zoom call with Michael and his wonderful agent, Willie, that all the marbles were riding on this, because if he didn't like it, then I was going to have a really tough conversation in front of me. But as long as the risk doesn't jeopardize your business, your team, or alienate a person or a people or a community or anything like that, if it's a risk that can fall squarely on your shoulders, there just come times where you say, I believe this is going to work more than I'm afraid of the blowback. And every time, and I talk to my friends about this that have done incredible work, there's just always a moment of that. And that is a sort of a EQ thing.
How did you sell him on that idea when you got on that Zoom?
He, in anything you've got to match energy. And so we popped on a Zoom, and Michael's he's a lot like he is in his characters, very small, reserved. So I didn't go New York ad professional. I think I opened with the self-effacing joke that felt appropriate. I said, this is going to be really weird for both of us because I'm going to show you a deck of work that has your face all over it, but we've never met, and I'm really sorry if that's if that makes it weird. And he kind of chuckled or whatever, and I popped it up, and it was just the TV script. We didn't want to overwhelm him with a giant campaign that was going to take a lot, and he, thankfully, he's the right casting and it was the right idea because he is he's a bit of a prankster. He likes the long con. He liked the idea of tricking the internet. So kind of that, I don't know whether he loved the jokes or the writing, but I think to do a Super Bowl ad and use his name in it, I think for him to pull one over was interesting to the kind of alt comic that world that he lives in. So it was very, it was lucky. It was definitely lucky.
I want to learn about a time when you failed, specifically the learning lesson in that moment. I believe this is when you lost a huge client or the biggest client. What happened and what did you learn?
This is a good one. And I think I'm conscious. I think we're talking about creativity, and obviously I think it's a great subject, but this actually, I think falls right into not creative leadership, but just what a moment of leadership feels like. So, Nancy, my business partner today, we were together at this same agency called TBWA, and I think I can actually share the specifics of it because our biggest client that probably accounted for a third of our revenue was Accenture, and Accenture tapped us for their advertising. And we sort of knew, but maybe we're in a little bit of denial when Accenture started buying ad agencies, that one day someone at Accenture is going to say, hey, we should have the ad agencies we own do our stuff, not these folks. So it was not, thankfully, it was more of a story about a crisis than a screw up. But, what was going to happen is that we had 6 months on the contract, and we had to part with some people immediately because they reduced the scope of the business. But all of a sudden the mission for the year, which was to have a big, fantastic, glossy, creative year, it very much turned into how do we stave off shrinking and how do we protect our team? Um, and so I'm a big fan of Danny Meyer's leadership style. And one of my favorite things I read in Setting the Table, which was around this time, probably had read this a few months earlier, was anecdotally, he talked about how he was sitting with no, you know what? Maybe this was in Daniel Coyle's book, but he also talks about it in his own book because this is why, I'm Daniel Coyle and culture obsessed. But effectively, he's sitting there with Daniel in Coyle's book, but the anecdote is repeated in a different way in his own book. And a server drops a tray, and Daniel Coyle looks at Danny Meyer, and Danny Meyer quietly just kind of leans back and looks over his shoulder, and Danny says, "What happened? It's the plates breaking isn't the thing. I'm really looking at what happens afterwards." And he watched, and all of a sudden, that one waiter standing there, and another waiter shows up with a broom, and another waiter shows up and brings a new tray. But what makes the culture that Danny Meyer created, and I think the best kind of cultures is ones where, to an extent, like a team, you're playing for each other. And so the idea is, in our business, sometimes you think about how am I going to service the client? But really, what you want to be is the kind of team that is completely in it for each other. And so if you're, let's say, a client at a restaurant, if you watch that tray thing happen, you like the way that team operates. You want to be part of it. That is an environment you want to be part of. That you want to be close to that. So as this thing happened, Nancy and I made the choice not to be scared, not to talk to everyone about the bad things that could come, but instead we had two pitches in the pipeline, and we said, "All right, everybody, this is one of these moments. This is a bad thing that happened. Let's band together. Let's not be fear-based. Let's approach both of these things with what is the best possible thing we can do, and work that way." And a truly magical thing happened, and we started feeling, in a way I hadn't before at the company, if there was, an art director, at 9 p.m. at her desk, working on a comp, putting together a visual. If there was another art director that was about to leave, they'd stop and say, "What do you need help with that?" There was something happening where, it wasn't a team pitching this to try to win. It was, can this company do it? And it changed everything. It changed everything for us. And we started in new business presentations afterwards saying to clients, "You don't come first. This team here, taking care of each other, comes first. And as a result of that, you're going to have the best possible team." But that moment, it was just a real make or break moment. And I hope my description of it is doing it justice. But instead of people worrying about their own jobs, people started taking care of each other, and everything got better. And there felt like there was more purpose behind everything everyone was doing, more energy, and it just felt like everything came together.
I love that example. Dan Coyle stuff is so good. I was at a basketball game last night, and I like to watch how the team responds when it doesn't go their way. I think that really shows a lot about the culture of the team, especially if like a guy gets called for a foul, whether it's a good call or a bad foul or whatever happens. And the team I was watching, the four other guys, if one of the guy either got a foul or missed a shot or had a turnover, they would all go and touch him on the butt or touch him on the back or smack his hand. And like, to see them all get a touch, it happened every single time throughout the whole game. I was fascinated watching. Not only they celebrate when it goes well and they had fun, and during timeouts they're going crazy for each other, and they have celebrations on the bench when they get a big dunk or something, but even more so when a guy makes a mistake or makes a bad play, every other guy gets a touch. And I think those little things are huge. Those are massive. And that's like, I was thinking about that last night when I saw that happening as I was preparing for our conversation, because I had an inkling about this story from reading your notes, and I thought like, that's like the little stuff, that's the big stuff. But how do you get that? Like, how do you have that happen? What do you do? Because you can be like, "Hey guys, get a touch." Like, it's more than that. Like it's got to come from you as the leader too. But what did you do that made everybody want to come together and say, hey, we come first. It's us. We're taking care of each other first. And then the outcome of that will be that we'll take care of our clients, but it's all about us. Like, how do you get people to want to do that?
It's funny. It's like you can't if I'm taking myself back to it, it is there's a philosophy probably came from a Learning Leader podcast, but management by walking around.
Yeah.
Nancy and I
Tom
spent
Peters.
a lot of time, I whether by accident or not, my office, in between my office and the restroom was the entire creative department, and I drink a lot of water. Every time I go by, I would task. I had to know what everyone was working on. So I think we were, this was, pre-COVID. So this is everyone in the office at all times. I think it was a matter of, of 100 small interactions. And then, as culture is built by the stories, the stories you tell. And I think as soon as we started seeing some of these different behaviors, people again banding together rather than thinking of themselves, we complimented it, we highlighted it, we talked about it ourselves, but it was, you can't announce it to the company. I think you've got to talk to people one-on-one about it. You got to nudge people, maybe, can you help out on this, or would do that, but just appeal to everyone's good nature, appeal to everyone believes that they're a team player. Everyone knows that deep down they have good nature. I think if you make a few spot appeals and you watch the connections happen, I think it's probably one of those things with a number of us in leadership going around and doing that, and then packaging it, talking about it, telling everyone about all the great things everyone's doing. But it was organic. It was a organic campaign for sure. And then afterwards, we talked about it all the time.
Yeah.
That was, a lot of companies will put a mission or a purpose on the wall. We felt like we did this. We owe, like, this is not recent history. This is not elongated history. You just did this. You just came together, took care of each other, and we succeeded and won because of it. And so it became very easy to talk about it going forward.
That matters so much. Like, what is the leader focused on? What does he or she say to the team? Are you just putting up the stack rankings of the sales organization and just mentioning the people who sell a lot? Or are you using and telling real stories of people living up to the core values of the company, or real stories of people helping others? I think that's critical.
Yeah. But I think I think we talked about the whole group, but then everyone was just, again, it was, the best thing you can do for someone is to say something kind about them behind their back.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to compliment someone to their face. It's also easy to be pronounced out, but to go around and show what we're valuing, show where the energy is, show what everyone's seeing, making sure you see people helping each other, rewarding it in that way. But it was, it was a bunch of lifeboats, kind of connected, more than pulling a ship up from underwater.
Love it, man. You're working at BBDO again, and you're trying to grow this business, fix it. I guess you said this is your third turnaround. Is that right?
This would be, so when Nancy and I worked together at TBWA, it was doing well, but we definitely were part of a bigger team that ratcheted it up. And then at Ogilvy in North America, again, I joined this is, by the way, I am a ingredient. Some days I'm a strong spice. Other days I'm literally just a little bit of cream in the sauce. So I'm the one talking about it. But at TBWA there was a lot of people, and at Ogilvy there was a lot of people. But it's joining. I don't think I would do well. I would have been bad on the '93 Chicago Bulls. But I might have been okay on the whatever, a 500 team. I feel like there's taking something that's 99% perfect. That's a lot of pressure to find that 1%. I get much more excited when you look at 50% to a bigger gap to close means there's more energy, there's more meat there, there's more to do. So I joined a team that were looking to take the Ogilvy, very famous, iconic advertising brand that's phenomenal all around the world, but had not been its strongest in North America, and say, okay, let's bring some energy here. So it's a game of putting. I'm also good at choosing them. I knew who was over at TBWA, and that was going to be a win. I knew who was over at Ogilvy, and I know who was over here at BBDO. So I feel like I'm joining on something that's going to be great. So you got to go with that energy. But like anything, you know, three giant pieces of work, three new business wins, three things that signal what we feel we're capable of is really the secret. And then it's just working with the team and trying to drum those things up. And it's really hard and it's really simple at the same time. That's always what it is in our industry anyway.
One more. I know we got to run, but I'm curious, and you've listened, so you probably know what's coming. But and a lot of this conversation probably we've talked about this, but you're speaking to a newer person, whether it's in your industry or somebody else's, college graduate, and they want to leave a dent in the world. What are some general pieces of life/career advice you'd give to them?
I knew it was coming, but then I got booked up this morning, and I intended to. I'll talk to anyone who wants to pursue a career and leadership in a creative industry. And the advice that was baked into me, I think through maybe some of my early resilience or whatever, is do not give up. It is you can have 100 ideas that get shot down, but if idea 101 is the State Street fearless girl, or Snickers, you're not you when you're hungry, you will very quickly forget about those 100 ideas, and you'll probably realize those 100 ideas were never as good as number 101. But I think I think the field of play in creative industries is harder and harder. But we're all competing in the same way, and just be someone who has the heart and spirit of an artist, but tons and tons of resilience, and love your resilience and love that fortitude that it takes to continue being creative while the world keeps killing your ideas, because that mindset, you will get ideas into the world. That's it for a burgeoning creative folk.
Yeah. As the great Jimmy Dugan said in A League of Their Own, the heart is what makes it good, man. It makes it more rewarding. It makes it feel better when you do get the 101st idea out there after the first 100 gets shot down or ignored, man. Chris, I love this. Thank you so much for reaching out.
Thanks for having me.
I would love, I mean this, like, I'd love to continue our dialogue. I'd love next time even to meet in person. It'd be great if I'm in New York and we could
That would be
go
awesome.
to your breakfast spot or go to dinner or drink
We'll
some
go
beers.
to Balthazar or dinner any Friday or Wednesday. Sometimes I hold a Wednesday at times.
Nice.
We have a pub at our office. And by the way, like I know you're a sports fan, and I've doing 7 years of Foot Locker ads and Heisman House ads. I have some pretty funny athlete anecdotes that are not good for on the air, but are very. Can I give you one that I feel like as a quarterback you would love?
Please,
Okay.
please.
We did this Foot Locker commercial called All Is Right. And it basically, there was like a sales event, and there were so many great shoes available at Foot Locker that it felt like all was right in the world. And then we showed like a sports world where all these things were righted. And I don't know if you remember this one, but Mike Tyson knocks on the door, and Evander opens it, and he says, "Evander, I brought your ear." And he's got a box with a piece of ear in it. And so we had Dennis Rodman buying a one-way ticket to North Korea. And this was the same year where Favre just refused to hang it up. And one of the things we cut to is Brett Favre at a diner, and he's pushing a piece of pie away, and the waitress is like, "You don't want that?" And he goes, "A guy's got to know when to stop. I'm done," or whatever. But everyone was kind of giving the world what he want, or whatever. So Favre liked the script and he agreed to do it. We had to go to Hattiesburg, and he gave us half an hour because he was coaching a high school for a year or two in Hattiesburg. And so we went, and our young creative team are standing there. And so this is, you know this, but whatever, he was in Roger's way, and they're never super tight, but whatever. So my copywriter Mike was just standing next to Brett, and we were shooting it on a Friday, and Brett opens his Yahoo app and opens his fantasy app, and Aaron Rodgers was his quarterback. But those are the things where you're like, you're like, God, I wish I could tell
Yeah.
some people. Like, I was like, I should have called Bleacher Report and been like, you'll never guess who Favre's starting QB is. So
So good. Oh man, thank you, Chris. This is definitely won't be the last one. I really appreciate it. Look forward to the next one already, man.
same. Hopefully it didn't seem too I mean, I know we're talking about an individual journey. I hate it to sound too or self-serving, but it is like you're talking about your own career. But I hope it doesn't come off too much I in it. Although I know we're talking about,
No, I mean, I think I mean I find your story fascinating. That's why we're recording, and I couldn't do it if I didn't think that. And so if that's the case, then I want to go really deep on the specific stories, on what you messed up, where you failed, where you did well, why you did well, how you did well, and then how can that lesson be portable
yeah,
for other people? I
yeah,
mean, first and foremost for me, like this is a selfish endeavor. It started and continues to be my personal leadership PhD program.
yeah.
So I am happy that you and your wife sit in the sauna and listen to it. Like
I know.
that really warms
It's
my
really
heart.
funny. I mean, it's going to be. I mean, we're never going to listen to this one together, obviously, because it'd be way too
You
way.
have to. What do you mean?
Oh
You're gonna
God, no.
criticize yourself the whole time. That's how it goes. But you got to do it, right?
I guess
No,
so.
but that is the part about it that I'm so grateful that a community has built around it. But initially, it started and still remains a leadership PhD program for myself, and then I'm happy for the benefit of others.
No,
So like
I would have done
I'm fascinated by.
if I had the idea when you did. That's exactly what I would do. I'd be like, how could I talk to a fuckload of interesting people? I would. It's genius because you get. Yeah, you've had so many great guests on. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's the best, dude. It's the best job in the world. That's why, like, I mean, I did do it for free for many years. And I would forever do it for free because there are so many people who have done extraordinary things. And once we dig into those stories, there's really just amazing moments that we can draw from. So yeah, I think if you weren't curious about people and their stories, yeah, then it wouldn't be good. But if you are, then this is the place for that. And it's certainly the place I'm trying to cultivate and create because I'm just grateful that I get to do it. So that's that. You've heard probably the thing. What's the reward? Just that you get to keep doing it. That's it.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
work is the win, and the reward is that you get to keep doing the work. So to
That's
me,
right.
that's how I view this. So anyway, man, I appreciate it. I know you got to run. This was so much fun,
No,
though.
thank you. This is a highlight of my week. So
Love it.